Okay, so on with us today for our team is going to be Mike Knaeble. And Mike is is an account manager with our sales team. We have Julia Roy and Jessica Sage, both of whom are on our support team. And then you have me, who is a project manager and then also a technical advisor for the sales team. And I'm going to let Mike take over as the introduction, and then we'll move forward through the presentation.
All right. I just got to say, we're really excited to share this session on connection forms. It's been something that the entire team and the dev team has just been so excited to bring available to our clients. But before we go into more, I'd like to share another client spotlight, this time from South Carolina. So Tom, if you could kick off the spotlight.
Hi, my name is Dot Fetters, and I am the registrar at Greenville Tech Charter High School in South Carolina. We have an enrollment of approximately 450 students in grades 9 through 12. We've been using Scribble software for a couple of months. Our school started on August 10th. The team of Scribble software worked fast to get us up and started so that our parents could complete the online enrollment the first week of August. Because we started with remote learning, it was imperative that we could have our parents complete all the required documents online. We have over 97% that have completed the online enrollment, and in my previous experience, normally this would be around 60% to complete paper copies. Online enrollment has not only saved us a lot of time, but it has also saved us a lot of paper. We are also using the lottery piece. We've just opened up our lottery, and we anticipate this system saving us a significant amount of time. Everything will be electronic, and it will save us time and paper, and will help ensure that we have all the documents required to enroll our lottery winners. The team of Scribble software has been great to work with. As with any change in procedures, we've had some growing pains. However, Scribble software has addressed all our needs in a very quick and professional manner. We've been very happy with Scribble software, and we look forward to a long partnership.
Just want to say thanks to Dot and the entire team there. There's really some kind words and appreciate that. So before I turn the reins over to Tom a little bit, I'd like to share a few thoughts about this game-changing application from Scribbles. And I really do consider it a game changer. When you think about the number of forms that are post-enrollment, right, most of which require a guardian signature and are either in paper format or PDF requiring printing and signing, those are cumbersome. They're cumbersome for your families, and they're cumbersome upon the district. And in the end, it ends up being a generation of even more paper, even if they are PDF. And PDF, while great, have a lot of restrictions to them. But it's not only the distribution of forms, whether paper or PDF, to families, it's the follow-up to get the forms returned to your district, returned with valid signatures. That's often causes delays. It can impact the students. Working with one of the districts that I work with out in the West, they were talking about the selection process, that opting in and opting out part of the process for students that can impact them participating in a graduation if the parents neglected to get that in with the signature. But there's forms that not only need to be signed by the guardian, but they need to be reviewed by staff in the district. And one of the really cool things about connection forms is that being tied to the student, any of your staff that have that access and need that access are able to access those forms. So again, that becomes a very cool feature that you're not going to have with paper, you're not going to have with PDF. And then think about when events happen that require new forms to be created. And boy, has this been a year of events, right? But it's not just COVID, which we've had many districts that needed to initiate, a COVID attestation form as a requirement and have families acknowledge what the policies of the district are going to be and get that back. But you can have all kinds of other less intensive events, such as change in technology policy, other policy changes that need to be acknowledged by the family, by the guardians, sometimes even by the students, right? There could be a change in student code of conduct, just based on the events that are going on, that you want that signature from the student as well as the guardian. So connection forms, it's more than just a form that can be accessed and signed from your mobile device, which is pretty darn cool when you think about it. But it's got the ability to capture the data that a PDF form is just not going to do for you. And with that data, to generate reporting. And that can be extremely valuable when you're collecting various data points within the form that you would really like to have reporting upon for leadership and for department staffs. So when combined with Scrib Choice, families can be actively notified by email, text, voice, the family dashboard, that there's a new form to complete, and then get reminders until those forms are completed. So, the last thing I'd like to do is I'd like to cite an example. So District Out West replaced just one form. Now, it was a multi-part form that literally went across their district at a cost of $15,000 a year to print that form. Just replacing that form provided them an immediate ROI to Connection Forms, just that one form. So, Tom, I hope I didn't steal too much of your thunder, but this is just an application that I personally am just so excited about, having been around e-forms and this space for, well, you can see if my photo is showing up there, if my video, I'm old. But this is truly exciting technology, and Scribbles has taken it to a new level. So Tom, turn it back to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. And I want to, echo everything that Mike has said, especially the fact that he's old. So we're going to go on ahead and start working through this process. And so I want you guys to imagine, right? So let's talk pre-COVID. Okay. So pre-COVID, when you had to send forms home to parents, you typically did it through the student, and you would hand the forms off to the student, and you're probably looking at around 30% of these forms are going to end up in the bottomless book bag, never to be seen or heard from again. And then you have to turn around and try to chase these parents to try to be able to get the signatures that you're looking for so that you can have all of the forms completed. Sometimes you have to threaten we're not going to do this, or you're not going to do that unless we get these forms completed. And it can become a very cumbersome and a very intense process where you're spending a lot of time trying to do this. Now let's think about COVID. So with COVID, now we don't even have the ability a lot of times to send the forms home with the student. Now we're trying to send them electronically, email them to parents. Parents fill out the forms, email them back. Sometimes these forms have personal information. So you're emailing forms not secure back and forth with parents. I mean, it can just really be not a very good process, and certainly not a good process for the parent to have to go in, download the form, sign the form, take picture, scan it, then email it back, and it just becomes cumbersome. So that's where we came up with our connection forms. So basically what happens is that we create the form or forms that you have necessary that need to be signed or need to be completed. Those forms are then assigned to the parent in the parent dashboard as a task. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. As soon as we initiate those forms, we're going to send an email out to the parents and say, hey, you have new forms to complete. Oops. Okay, so the parent first experiences when they log into their family dashboard, they're going to have this that says, hello, you have 9 open time-sensitive tasks. What does that mean? We call them tasks because even though we're going to talk a lot of times about forms, the future of this is going to go beyond just forms. And one of those I'm going to talk about as to what we just recently added as a really cool feature. But basically, they are going to have tasks, and it's going to tell them that they have tasks. So when they first log into their family dashboard, they're alerted to it. To complete the task, they would either click the complete open tasks. Or if they wanted to go back to their applications in their family dashboard, they could click on View Applications. When they click on viewing the the tasks, then you can see right here I have 4 children. Okay, of these 4 children, Amy has 1 task open and 2 that are completed. Boom Boom has 2 and 1 that are completed, and so forth. So basically we have, this is telling the parent what children have what forms that are needed to be completed and what forms have already been completed. When they click on a student, then they are shown what needs to be completed and what has already been completed. And so in the green are completed tasks, and then up here in the yellow are the tasks that have not been completed. So the parent is then able to go in and actually click on the form to be able to see the form in order to complete it. As with all of our applications built within the Family Dashboard, you have the ability to translate into 109 different languages. So there's one big advantage to these forms. So when you have some parents who do not speak English, they can actually go in and instead of having to find someone to translate the forms for them in order to be able to sign them, they can actually read these forms in their home language. So in this instance, they chose Punjabi. So not only is their experience with the form themselves going to be this way, it's their experience through the entire application and in the Family Dashboard are all going to be translated into their home language. So when they complete a form is going to look like this. It's going to have multiple different types of questions that we can ask. So we can configure the form to be exactly what you need to meet whatever forms that you currently are using. Then we can do anything from drop downs to multi-selects to fill in the blanks to essays to yes, no's, true, false, all those different types of questions. We can ask those questions and they can be customized specifically to what your forms are. We can also require parent initials and student initials. So in some cases, you may have, for example, a technology policy. You need to get that policy out. You send the policy out, and in that policy, you also want the student to sign as well. Now, we can push these forms out in different ways. We can push them out according to grade. We can push them out according to whether they're new students or they're renewing students. So we can basically, if you said, hey, we want all new students that are in the 6th grade to receive this form, we have the ability to do that. At the end of the form, we collect an electronic signature. As you can see here, we are actually logging the IP address, okay, the date and the time that the signature occurred, okay? So the other piece that I want to reiterate is that we are also sending out daily reminders to the parents via email so that they are getting a reminder every day that they have forms to complete, and that once they complete those forms, then the emails will stop, but they're going to continue to get them until they go in and they complete their forms. On the user side, so from your side, you're going to have, you're going to be able to see based upon schools. So if you're a central office user where you can see all the schools, then you will be able to drop down and actually see the students from that particular school. If you are just assigned to, say, for example, Banyan Elementary, I'm only going to see the students and their forms from Banyan Elementary. Or if I'm assigned to 3 or 4 schools, I'm only going to see forms for those 3 to 4 schools. Okay? The other thing I want to reiterate is that these forms are not tied to an application, an enrollment, a choice application, or anything like that. The only thing the parent needs is a family dashboard. They don't have to have any applications in the system. So this is a totally separate process, separate from those applications. To see the forms, you would click this little I, and then that will show you the list of forms. Okay? And so in this example, I can see all the forms that that were sent to this particular student or the parent of this student. And then I can see which forms are outstanding. So these forms are open, and I can see which forms are complete. I can also click on those forms to be able to view those forms. The other ability I have is the ability through here by clicking this little plus button up here, I can go on ahead and actually send a form to a parent. So for example, there is a situation, maybe a permission slip for a field trip needs to go out, or for an example, maybe there's an over-the-counter medication request that needs to go out. You can just simply sit there and actually send those to the parent directly. And then when you send that to the parent, you can tell the parent, hey, log into your family dashboard and complete the form. Okay, so you're still not having to have that go-between with the student. You're not sending it to them. The parent doesn't have to come down to complete the paperwork. It can all be done electronically through their family dashboard. The new feature that was just recently added in the last couple of weeks is that I can now send forms back to parents. So if there is a specific type of form that, or a specific document that needs to be sent back to the parent, I have that ability as well. So what's the difference? In one case, we send a form, and the form has to be completed and submitted by the parent to us. In this case, it's the opposite. I'm taking a form that I've completed, or a document I've completed, or a document that is student specific, and I'm sending it back to the parent. It shows up on the parent as a task. They will get a notification saying they have something to download, a document to download, and then when they go in, they're going to see that it is a task on their dashboard. So this is good in that we have the ability for you to not only do that, you can also send it to. So if, for example, there was, God forbid, a disciplinary issue, you could send the disciplinary form back to the parent via their family dashboard. The really cool thing here is you're also going to know when the parent picks it up. The parent can't say, I never got it. They received it and you have evidence that they did. Conversely, the parent is always going to know that they would have received it through their family dashboard. And if they haven't, then they can contact you and say, hey, I'm not seeing it. So then that gets us to reporting. So any form that we set up in our connection forms piece can be exported into a report. So not only in this particular case, what I've highlighted are the engagement status, whether or not they've opened and they've completed their form or they have not completed their form. So the ones that are open here, all the folks that got the form sent to them. The other is the ones that say completed are the ones that have actually completed the form. So I'm able to track who has and who has not completed their forms, and I'm able to do it all within a very easy and simple report. In addition to that report, I also have given the parents contact information, including their email. So if you actually do, if the reminders aren't getting it going, you can always go in and actually reach out to the parent to remind them that they need to go in and sign their form. In addition to this, any data that any question that we asked in the form, any data that we put into that form is now extractable and will show up in the report. So the answer to all of those questions that you've asked in that form now becomes data that you can export into this report. And when you export that data, then you can use that data for analysis. Okay? So for example, if you did a language survey, you could sit there and be able to sort it out to determine the language, how many people that in our district speak Spanish. You would actually be able to, by using that language survey, know how many people in your district speak Spanish. Okay. Oh, not prize time yet. Okay, so I would like to take this time to open it up for questions. And I know that both Mike and Jessica and Julia have all been monitoring the chat, so they should be able to give us some good questions.
Yeah, we have a number of questions, Tom, and I'll also let the others chime in. I'll pose one at the moment. It says, can forms be filled out on a mobile device on an app?
Absolutely, but not on an app. It's all done within their web browser. Okay, so we're not downloading an application to their phone, they're doing it all via web browser, and yes, they can complete and sign those forms via the mobile device. As a matter of fact, most of our parents actually use mobile devices in order to be able to complete our forms, or even submit applications like enrollments or choice applications or lottery applications. Most parents that do all this is on the mobile device, and so our system is designed to be mobile friendly, but it's all done through their web browser.
Another question is, and I'm not completely sure of the context, but when they use other language, or I guess another language, how will they be able to read it? So I guess the question is, can the forms be multilanguage?
So if we kind of go back, basically when the parent goes in and logs into or goes to their dashboard, or even the page that they log into their dashboard, they can change the language to their home language. And from there, from that point forward, everything will be translated, including the forms, into their home language. So they will be able to respond and complete those forms in their home language. Does that answer the question? I'm not really sure if that was...
I think what they were asking was, once they do change the language, will then revert back to English, so then the processor can then process the form.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's not going to be in that language when you receive the form. So the form is still going to be in English on the user side. It's just that the form is going to be presented to the parent in their home language. So they can still complete the form, and they're going to see it in their home language, but you, the user, are going to see it in English.
And that's why it's better when a more technical person reads into the context of the question. We have another question that's popped in. Is there a way to add text messaging to remind parents? So maybe you could just speak briefly again, reminding of the reminder capabilities that go out through the family dashboard.
We try to maintain it as an email reminder. The purpose for maintaining it as the email reminder is that we've discovered that when it comes to the forms, there's typically a much longer period of time than maybe some of our other apps that they have in order to get it in, and we've been asked pretty much to maintain that as an email. There is a text option, and so we certainly have that of capability, but we would need to discuss it as far as the implications of what that is so that we can go all the way through.
We have a question from Mary. She asked, how are forms created? Can a school take a PDF form and convert it easily, or are they all custom built?
Okay, so we build those forms for you. When you purchase or you become a client with using these types of forms, us building those forms for you is part of that process. Because we are building those forms on HTML, we want to be able to do it ourselves so that we can make sure that the forms are correct, and that we can put in all the features that are necessary to make sure that the form works and functions exactly the way that you want it to function. But the turnaround time is probably typically the next question. Well, how long does it take? Well, my response to that is, well, how big is the form? But typically on a standard form, it's probably going to be within a few days. Sometimes even same day, depending on if it's an emergency situation. We have to get this out now. But normally what we're requesting is a week lead time before we have to put the form out. But if we're dealing with something that's an emergency situation, we certainly can address it.
Hey, Tom, I have a question based a little bit off that. So if they're wanting to specifically put a form out, say it's a lunch application, would that be a form that we would create for them, or would that be something that they would then upload into the task form themselves using the PDF?
We would go on ahead and just create those forms for them. Okay, we would want to do that because, again, we're putting it into HTML, and that way then it can be exported out as data. And because it's in HTML, it's also enabling them to be able to see the multiple languages, versus if you uploaded a PDF, you're not able to translate that PDF into multiple languages.
question that came in, and I can answer it since I'm in sales. Is connection forms part of Scrib order, or excuse me, Scrib choice? And connection forms is a module itself that complements Scrib choice, can also complement Scrib enroll, but most commonly Scrib choice. And with connection forms, they're basically, the subscription is as a package. So the package includes up to 5 connection forms. And as Tom had pointed out earlier, that includes all the services for Scribbles to build out that HTML form exactly as you need it to be to perform.
And in addition, that flat rate for those forms, it counts for all of the signatures associated with that form. So instead of charging per signature, we just charge a flat rate. And then, so that's kind of how we manage it.
Another question that, boy, they're coming in pretty fast. How long do you keep this information every year? Okay. How long do you keep this information every year it is discarded? So I guess their district discards all those annually, or some of them.
We're going to keep them. We don't tend to, we can purge them if you ask and you say, hey, can you purge all of last year's forms? We can certainly do that, but we're not going to do that automatically. That is strictly, we have kind of a big rule at Scribbles, which is you don't delete anything. So that would, if you guys say, hey, we want you to purge all the forms, we can certainly do that for you. But as standard out of the box, we don't do that. We don't delete them.
Another question, are these mostly standard forms that the district uses regularly, or what do you envision kinds of forms that a district may create? The things that like a school specifically uses, which is a great question. And so absolutely, common forms we see districts do, but there are also, we've got districts and even forms that are specific to a school. So for example, I'm working right now with where it's a magnet school that has a very specific form for attending that magnet school. So forms can be specific, they can be unique, or they can be very taking some of your common general forms. Obviously, there's a pretty big ROI when you look at some of the more common forms, such as the one I pointed out, which happened to be a transportation form, but it was a very specific form with codes of conduct and other things that were involved in required signatures. So, you just want to kind of put some thought to the types of forms you have, but certainly we have the ability to create a form specific to a specific need. Jessica, you got some others out there?
Yes. One question was, how many forms can be built into the system?
There's no limit to the number of forms that can be built into the system. And you also have the ability so that there's going to be some forms that'll just expire, or you need to change and you need to say, hey, I got to change this form and we need, so anybody from this point forward needs to sign these forms, this new form. We certainly have the ability to do that. But the forms there's no limit as to the number of forms that we can have in the system, nor the number of forms that can be sent out of the system. So for example, we have a very large school district with well over 130,000 students that is going to be using our connection forms.
Another good one that just popped in is, is there a drop-down capability within the forms? So the ability that based upon clicking a field, which I think is one of the very unique aspects of this form. If you could, I think you reviewed it, but if you could expand on that some more, Tom.
Yeah, so I forgot, I do that all the time. I forget to cover the nested questions, which is kind of cool. So basically, a nested question is based upon the answer to a question, it can result in one or multiple questions opening up, right? So parent answers yes to question 1, and as a result of answering yes to that question, then 4 other questions appear. But if they answered no to that question, then those other 4 questions don't appear. So not only can we do that, we can also make those fields required. So for example, any of our questions can be required questions. But if we were to take and open up those 4 questions, and those 4 questions were now required because that person said yes, we can do that. So he said yes, now 4 more required question comes up. In order for them to submit the form, they have to complete those 4 required questions. It was the nested, I assume, was the question about that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The ability to have, based upon the drop down. It might also be just to make sure that we're being clear to the context of the question, that would you be able to have a field that would have a drop-down list of potential answers?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right? So
and we can do the both. We can have a drop-down list, and if they answered a certain way on that drop-down list, it would result in multiple questions being opened up. So, yeah.
There's a question I'd like to throw out at you, Tom, since you've been involved in a lot of these, because I think it's a really good question that came in early. And I believe it's one of our clients that's using Forms. And the question says, any thoughts on increasing the percentage of families that fill out forms online? We're hovering around 50% and have been sending notices home since July. So any thoughts on what you've seen be successful at districts for getting families to engage the online forms? I know one of our districts that you and I have worked on where they basically just let families know this is how you do it. There is not an alternative, and not submitted, then these things are not going to happen. But do you have any other thoughts that maybe for encouraging the families?
Oh, Tom, I have a thought.
Yep.
When I was working at a school district, we would send out the messages, the notifications, the phone calls. People do not like to get millions of phone calls. And so they would call and they would say, can you make these phone calls stop? And I would say, did you complete your application? Did you submit what you were supposed to? Well, no, not yet. And I was like, well, that is the way to get it to stop. So people, when you start to inconvenience people, that is one way to get them to do that. But also letting them know the time scenario, the difference in time. Doing it on paper versus doing it online, it's going to take them a lot less time. The information is needed by the school district in order for them to make decisions in real time. So, just showcasing to the data behind it is really helpful.
And one last thing I kind of want to cover when it comes to that is that, when you're dealing with that daily reminder system where the parents are receiving those reminders every single day, it does make a big difference. Okay, it does make a difference in that they do want that to stop. And that's probably something that, if you're not using our forms, you probably have not been able to do. And I think that's kind of what helps us to make it a little unique. And then the other thing is that as time goes on, the family dashboard is becoming more and more familiar to them, so it doesn't become as cumbersome. Is a lot of times completing this type of form this way or that type of form that way. We're going to be presenting them with the same way to do it across the board. And then the other thing is making the form simple, as Bridget said. So we have forms that we've created. So for example, there is the impact aid survey form. Pretty much everybody has to have that or uses that in order to look at federal funding. We have them sign that. But the way that we do it, we open up questions only if they answer yes to certain questions. So they can be done with the form in 4 clicks. So that enables them to be able to do it quickly, which if you make it an easier experience for the parent, it also is much less likely that they're much more likely that they're going to come in and complete the forms. And speaking of that impact aid form, we are working to where we'll be able to send it the answers electronically to the Department of Education every year. So that is in approval process right now. So
I have another question.
Mhm.
If we have several forms at the beginning of the year for parents to complete, would they receive them all at once? And will it be clear to the parent that there are multiple forms to complete?
Yes. So I'm going to go back. So what the parent will receive, yes, we would absolutely build it out. If you said, hey, we need these 6 forms all to go out at once, then we will send those out at once. The parent will then receive their notifications, and then it'll show them on there that they have 9 tasks. They'll be able to see here what forms have been completed and have not been completed. These are open. These are completed. And then when they click on the student, they're able to see these are the ones that need to be completed. These are the ones that have been completed. So it's very clear to the parent that multiple forms need to be completed, and that and what they have and have not completed in the process.
Tom, I'm going to add something to that. As a parent, I had to do this for my own children, and I think there were 6 or 7 forms depending on what grade level they were in. What was nice as a parent is I could walk away and go do something and come back and complete the form later, the rest of the other forms, because sometimes it does take a little bit of time to go through, especially like health forms and things like that. So it is nice to be able to have that tracker.
Right. And so, yeah, and so they don't have to complete all the forms in one sitting. They can complete a couple forms, then come back later and complete the remainder of their forms.
Okay, and one more thing, just because, because I always have a million questions. I think it's also really important for families to know that the information is private, secure, that their child's health information is not going to exchange hands with 5 people on the way to the nurse's office, right? It's going to go straight to the school nurse, which is a concern for a lot of families that have students or children with health issues. You know, that it's private. So that is a benefit and feature.
Okay.
Another question, because they keep coming in. Can the completed form be attached to the student information system attached to the student?
Okay, so if I get...
And I'm thinking, you know, the form is not really attached to the SIS, but certainly you can speak to the data.
Yeah, so the data that's in the form can actually be uploaded into an SIS via a CSV. So we can export that data into a CSV file that you can turn around and upload into your SIS system if you need to do that. Because forms are so customizable, when you start looking at an SIS system, then you're also looking at the type of SIS system along with what the database looks like and mapping fields and things like that. It's kind of has to be done, you know, the best way and easiest way to do that is to export it into a CSV and be able to import it in. And that would be the data field. So maybe instead of uploading a form direct, you are actually uploading the completion of the data. You can also print the forms or to be able to be uploaded, save the forms in a PDF version, things like that in order for you to be able to upload the forms.
Another question that I will answer. Are forms available to the district or just per school? So the connection forms is a district-wide module. So regardless of how many schools you have in your district, but you also have the capability. I think we discussed briefly. You have the ability, if you need a form that is specific to a school, that can be built out, or you know, the biggest bang for the buck, the greatest ROI, of course, is going to be on those forms that are across the district, or for example, across all of elementary, all of middle school, or all of high school, which is pretty common, right? Their forms often are specific to secondary or elementary. But no, you do not have to buy the forms for each individual school.